Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Caregiver's Toolbox, tools for everyday caregiving, likely the greatest podcast of all time with the greatest guest of all time. We have Tara Ballman. Tara, how are you?
I'm good, Ryan. Thank you. How are you?
Doing very well. And Tara is the president of Homeworks Physical Therapy located in Orange County. And we know each other through a little something called the NAIPC, the National Aging in Place Council. So we are on opposite ends of the country chatting via Zoom. How about that? If only our grandparents knew. But before we get into this, Tara, we have a sponsor. Yes, we have a sponsor. So I get to do a sponsor read. Today's podcast is brought to you by Well Aware Care, the smart elder care solution for today's caregivers. Sleep Sound, the company's premier solution, is a remote nighttime fall detection and notification system. Sleep Sound is there where you can't be and provides real-time fall notification to caregivers so help can be provided quickly. The system uses no wearables, buttons, or cameras and provides caregivers with peace of mind their loved one is safe. Learn more about the smart fall detection solution at wellawarecare.com, wellawarecare.com. How was that? Was that an okay read? We'll see.
That was very professional.
Very professional.
I'm impressed. Yes.
It was the most professional read I've ever done. It was easily the most, considering it's the only one I've done. But let's get back to you. You're over in Orange County. You are part of the National Aging in Place Council, and I'm going to keep saying that so people maybe look that up and find out more about your community that you're really spearheading. But we're going to talk a little bit about your business. So how about you explain who you are and how you got into your business and what your business does?
Okay, so our company is Homeworks Physical Therapy. It's actually my husband's company, and it's been serving seniors in Orange County for about 15 years now. So I came on board with him. We've been married 7 years. So I came on board with him 8 years ago, and I handle all of the non-medical side of things. And we have about probably 10 or 11 therapists on our books, and they go into patients' homes so patients don't have to be homebound or under all of those restrictions with Part A, benefits. We're Part B, outpatient. So it's really great for seniors who don't have transportation to get to therapy, or just by the time they get to therapy and getting in and out of the car, they're just exhausted sitting in the waiting room. And so they just don't want to do it. So we find really creative ways of, say, my husband is visiting somebody at 5 o'clock and the senior wants to cook dinner. So he'll help her cook dinner. And as they reach for plates, they'll reach 5 times, reach and stretch and grab and, do kitchen sink exercises and things like that. So we're able to get seniors moving a little bit more than, say, a therapist in a facility would.
Yeah, I mean, I know when I've done those types of exercises, I definitely, not me, but my caregivers have, we try to help out, but there's definitely a big difference between somebody that's a trained and professional PTOT versus, a caregiver that's there to help out with ADLs on most days.
Sure, and if they're Medicare patients, there's a certain amount of benefits that they receive every year through Medicare, and that resets at the end of the year. So this is things that seniors should take advantage of and go see their doctor, even if it's just basic strengthening exercises, or if something has changed a little bit in their lives and they need help getting proper access in and out of a car. There's definitely ways you can do that where it will hurt you and ways that it will be helpful to you. So there are a lot of little things that just seeing a physical therapist once or twice a year for a few visits, since it's already paid for, you might as well take advantage of it if you're a senior.
Absolutely. It's those benefits that somebody has. Now, getting back to you joining the company, your husband started the company and then you joined in 8 years ago.
Yeah.
So how did he start the company? What was the kind of process that caused it to become what it is?
Well, he was a wrestler in high school and college. He wrestled at West Virginia University, and he'd had a couple accidents and had a few knee surgeries. So he got into physical therapy from that side as a patient, and then just really enjoyed it and liked seeing the progress and what you can do to a human body and the way that it can recover. So that's how he got into it. When he's from New Jersey, when he moved out here to California, he just saw a need, and certainly one here in Orange County. So that's really how he started the business, and he just did it knocking on doctors' doors one on one. Ortho surgeons, gerontologists, pain management doctors, people like that, and leaving baskets with the staff so we can get 5 minutes with the doctor. You know, you probably know how those things go.
Oh yeah,
So
oh yeah.
that's how he got started. And then we actually met. I was working for the FDIC, not in senior care at all. And I was on a softball team, and we were short men one night. And he came out. That's actually how we met, playing softball in Irvine, California. And we just kind of connected, and one thing led to another, and we started dating. And when the FDIC shut the office down here, he was really just himself and a part-time biller, and there was so much opportunity. He was turning down business left and right. And I said, why don't you just, let's try this out. Let's give it a go and see what we can make of it. So thankfully we are still together, married, still married. We have a 3-year-old daughter now. And I think we've done pretty good with our business. So I
Yeah, and
consider it a success.
I think it's great and I ask because it's good to have people's backgrounds. I mean, how they get into things is always interesting, and there's usually a personal story behind it. And you know, who would have thought that softball would have brought you into? If it weren't for softball, we probably would have never met, because you
That
wouldn't have
is
thought to
true.
get into senior care. You know, it's just one of those things. So
Well,
it's
it's
funny how it
funny how
works out.
things go in full circle. I actually got into senior care years and years ago. I was a civilian employee at Fort Hood, Texas, in the MWR department, and I got a phone call from my dad in Florida. He had cancer. And so that phone call really changed my whole entire world, my trajectory of life, everything. So I ended up moving back to Florida, and he had just retired and was getting into reverse mortgages. So I was working with him in the reverse mortgage industry back in the early 2000s. I actually 2 books that I wrote on the subject. One was published in 2005 called The Reverse Mortgage Handbook. And then the second one was a few years later called Reverse Credibility. And it was all about how you should relate to seniors as a salesperson. It was only focused on salespeople. And we broke the process down. We called it our pie chart: process, intent, and expertise. So we really broke down each stage of the reverse mortgage process and covered the process of it, the intent behind it, and then the expertise and the rules and the legislation that really governed it. So that was my true entrance into the senior world. And I was also involved with the National Aging in Place Council back then, so many years ago. So, and that was in Florida. So it's really interesting how everything is connected and comes full circle.
You know, what the listeners don't know is that before we started recording, he's like, I don't know, I don't know, 60 minutes worth of content. And now you're dropping a bomb that you were in reverse mortgages and you wrote 2 full books on it, which not only deals with senior care, it deals with the real estate industry, and it deals with the sales industry. I mean, we should have blocked out 3 hours of time. You've got plenty of things to talk about it. And it's only been 10 minutes into this episode. So, I mean,
Yeah.
it's funny how people get worried about how they're going to make it through 30 minutes. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we could cover 3 hours right now. That's fascinating. So now you wrote 2 books on that, and what caused you to want to write books? Like, that's kind of an interesting thing.
It was actually by force, because my dad kept telling me, you need to do this, you need to do it. And finally I was like, okay, Dad, I'll do what you're telling me to do. But when we first got into it, I guess it was like 2003, 2004. And there really wasn't one single source for seniors to go to find reverse mortgage information. So when I started working with him, I kind of like to know all the rules to the game before I start playing it. So I found everything I could find on reverse mortgages, HUD, handbooks, anything you could find. And I put it in chronological order, and I read it. And so after I had all that knowledge, he was like, what are you going to do with all of that now? So I put it into a book because it is really, really complicated. So I took all of these HUD and mortgage legalese terms, and really broke it down into what seniors wanted to know. Do I lose my house? I heard this back in the day. Is this still the case? Tell me how the breakdown is. And just general, I wasn't trying to sell them a reverse mortgage. I just wanted to educate them. And that's kind of what the National Aging in Place Council is all about too, is education, not sales. So yeah, it was really interesting. That led to a little AM radio talk show that I used to have as well. It was a weekly call-in radio show, and it was all seniors, mostly reverse mortgage questions. And my co-host was a senior who was also selling reverse mortgages. Hi, David, if you're still out there. And so they would call in, and we'd have a good old time, a half-hour show every Friday.
That is, that's hilarious. I could just, now we need to hear your radio voice. What's your radio voice? And like, hello, everybody, and welcome to WRKO. And my name's Tara. And here, what we want to know the radio voice.
You know what? Let me read the next promotional thing for you, and then you'll hear it. How about that?
That would be awesome. That would be, so all right, I had so many questions. The ADD is going just crazy right now. So you wrote your books, and I was going to say that reminds me of my aunt and uncle. And what your kind of story is that my guess is, and I don't know your husband, and I'm sure he's the nicest guy in the world behind me. He probably sounds like he was the hunter. He was going out and getting the sales, and you know, I'm the hunter too. And there's pros and cons to the hunter. You just want to go out, you want to get the sale. And then once you catch that fish and the fish has been taken off the hook, you kind of don't care about the fish anymore. You just want to find another fish, right? And so my uncle joined the company where my aunt was kind of the hunter, and he put in the processes in place where it allowed the business to grow exponentially beyond her wildest dreams. And it was like this perfect 1-2 punch, if you will. And it sounds like with your business, you know, he was succeeding at what he was doing, but it takes a lot of time to be a hunter. It takes a lot of energy to be a hunter. And you need somebody back at the office to be processing everything and packaging the fish and getting it out to the supermarket so you can sell it. Would that be a good analogy of how your business kind of grew that way, or am I completely off base?
No, you are 100% completely right on. He is not an office guy. He loves being out with people. He loves putting his hands on people and working with them, and something different all the time. I am a people person to a point, and then I'm done. So to me, you know, COVID being at home, I was like, okay, well, welcome to my Monday. This is what I usually do. I sit here in my office and work. So we're really good with that. Sometimes he doesn't do the paperwork he's supposed to, so he does get locked out of the house until his notes get turned in, which is a perk that I have. Not so great for him, but you know, you got to do your notes.
I agree, because I when I was speaking with my aunt, when I started this taking over this company, I had considered getting into insurance and Medicare, Medicaid. And she was like, I don't know, Ryan, you don't have the personality for this. This is a lot of dotting I's and crossing T's. And, you know, the insurance paperwork is a real pain. And then they can come back a year later and say, you didn't do it right, and just retroactively take money away from you. And you're just going to go ballistic. And you're just going to, you know, and she goes, I was you. But then my husband came in and he could handle that, the minutia of all of that stuff, and it was key. And that's you know, an outstanding trait to have, because it's the yin and the yang of taking your, you know, as a business owner, and I'm sure you felt this way. You don't hire people that can do what you do well because you do that well. You hire people that can do all the things you don't do well, so that you have a team of people that work well together. And you know, it sounds like that was a perfect match for you and him.
Yeah, it's a great match.
That's funny how it's similar in that way. So you have 15, you have basically a dozen or 15 PTs and OTs on staff. How has COVID affected the business and being able to go out and see people in their homes, and how are you going through all of that?
You know, it's really interesting. It's been an interesting year for us. despite all of the struggles, it's actually been really quite good for us from a business point. I don't know if it's because our business model was already set up, so we had zero adjustments to make. We didn't have to worry about the telehealth and everything else that people were doing. Our biggest hurdle, well, when everything initially shut down here in California, in March, it was stay at home, no one goes out except essential, which physical therapists are considered essential, but it was the senior living communities where we couldn't get into and things like that, that were really our initial hurdles. But there were also people who had just had knee surgeries and other operations where their corner place was shut down and they're like, I need surgery. How am I going to get this? So that's a lot of the people that we picked up that way. They weren't necessarily Medicare. So it was a little out of our wheelhouse, but we were still pretty busy. And, we just have to be extra careful. The first few weeks, I made my husband strip in the garage and throw his clothes right in the washing machine because we didn't know, right, what was coming in or how it was transferred or anything like that. So we're just extra careful with our patients, and we do the temperatures and the protection equipment, and none of our therapists have been sick, and we've had a couple COVID patients that we've treated. So something that we're doing is working, which is good. And it's so important for seniors just to keep moving. Just a little inactivity can cause so many problems down the road. So, we've been doing therapy through front doors and through windows, the same way people are visiting their families. So it's been interesting having to make the adjustments, but as a company, we've done pretty good. I imagine you and home health have the same issues where people still need your services, non-medical care, but there are other hurdles you have to jump over.
Yeah, there was some really roller coaster quarters where, like, when March, April, May came, it was like a pretty good drop, and then it just right up. And because I think a lot of people, and myself included, we were, and maybe wishful thinking, that this was going to be a 4 to 8 week thing. And people, hey, I'll care for mom for 4 or 8 weeks just to make sure that they're safe, which is understandable. But then the sixth, seventh, and eighth week, when the 2 weeks to slow the spread turned into 2 months, turned into indefinitely, because clearly we didn't have a control over this virus. It made it very clear that people were going to have to, something was going to give, whether it was work, whether it was caring for loved ones, because life had to keep moving on, and people wanted to keep their jobs. And so, hey, let's go back to using Minute Women or private home care for our services. And that's kind of where we certainly feel super fortunate.
Yeah, and as stressful as it is just working at home, and I know there are a lot of people with children and also taking care of their parents, probably after that 8 weeks, they were like, something has to give. That's one
Yeah.
of the great things about the National Aging in Place Council that I love, that this pandemic, as horrible as it's been, it's made people think, okay, I actually do need to think about aging in place, and how am I going to take care of my parents? I can't even take care of myself in my home. How are they going to age in their home? So it's helped people to kind of get our concept a little bit more as well.
Yeah,
Aging in
absolutely.
place, living in place.
Absolutely. It's one of those things. And, I was just reading an article yesterday in the Wall Street Journal um, that conservatively, they think that air travel will drop by 20% and possibly up to 50% permanently because of COVID, because so many businesses have realized that the cost involved in traveling around the world versus just doing a Zoom, it's a no-brainer. And of course, this article is talking about, like, consumers just traveling for leisure are going to be the ones that pay the price, because it's those business class seats that offset a lot of the consumer seats, or the economy seats, or whatever they're called. And even Bill Gates was saying that he thinks it will be a full 50% drop. And it just made me think, like, well, if that industry is going to be permanently impacted in some way, right? It's going to happen in some way. what's going to happen with all these in-home, not in-home, but like assisted living and nursing homes
Oh, yeah.
that are so used to having people move in, where people are now realizing, well, we can make it work at home through home care, through, PT at home. I just had a call with a company that does in-home doctor's visits for your primary, so that mom and dad don't even have to leave anymore. And they'll go into assisted livings too, but there seems to be a bit of a momentum push of like, hey, we can really make this work with staying in place in a residential home. And I'll bring that back to reverse mortgages. Well, a lot of people say, hey, we got to sell the house to get the equity out of it to pay for the assisted living. Well, you can stay in the house and do a reverse mortgage and get the equity out of it to pay for in-home care as well. And it's there's other options there. So it's going to be interesting to see how that kind of impacts things with senior living communities in the future.
Yeah, that will be interesting. And I think one of the little used parts of a reverse mortgage is using a reverse mortgage to purchase a home. So in my mind, I see a lot of people in the future selling their large homes, downsizing to something more appropriate for aging in place, using the reverse mortgage funds to purchase the home, and then still having everything that they need in their world. It'll be interesting to see how it all unfolds. And now, like with WellCare, with the stuff that they're tracking with people and all of the new technological advances that are coming out, it's going to be so much easier just to like have peace of mind with your seniors. Did my dad fall? Do I know if he's on the ground? Things like that, where those sensors can certainly help. And I'm excited to see where everything is going in our industry, actually.
They're definitely interesting. And obviously they're sponsoring this podcast, but I mean, they're interesting in the fact that I told this to the guys, somebody's going to have the breakthrough with technology and seniors. Somebody's going to do it. There's a ton of money being put into it. And because you can pay me for one-on-one care, but that's an old school way of thinking, and it costs a lot of money, right? That their services can't do what I do in the sense of preventing a fall, like I can prevent a fall, but at least if mom isn't a major fall risk regularly, you can have a little bit of peace of mind and hedge your bets a little bit, rather than, there's some people that can't afford, $3,000 a week for somebody to be there every single night or whatever it costs. And so, there's going to be some interesting things that happen with senior care, especially as the baby boomers, age out. And then the next thing is you have the Generation X, right? Isn't that the next generation that comes through? But the Generation X has had, not that they're there yet, but they're having less kids. There's less of that family infrastructure as it was even with the baby boomers. So who's going to be taking care of these individuals who are going to be, for the most part, on their own? It's going to be fascinating the next, 10, 20 years.
Yeah.
Why'd you laugh? Why'd you laugh when I said Gen X? Isn't that the next?
No, I get lost with all of the Gen X, Gen Y, this millennials, it all just merges together for me. I'm like, are you my age? Are you older or younger?
I'm 36.
Okay, we're about the same. I wasn't specifically asking.
Oh, all right, gotcha.
That's how I gauge people, older, younger than my age, but we're about the same.
Gotcha. All right. Well, then that's good. Now, granted, you're doing a podcast with a guy that's over in Massachusetts. You're in Orange County. What is Orange County just your service area? Do you go further out? I don't know California as well, but this is obviously going to be part of the NAIPC. This is going to be on your personal page and to use it any way you want. How should people get in contact with you? Where do you service? And what are the types of people that should be calling your phone as many times in a row until they get a hold of you to get services?
Well, we have an answering service, so someone will answer the phone 24/7 all the time. Homeworks Physical Therapy. We're technically in Costa Mesa, California, but our therapists do cover all of Orange County. We cover a little bit into LA County, pretty much Long Beach South. We are interested in expanding into more LA and San Diego. There's kind of Camp Pendleton between Orange County and San Diego that is a huge chunk that really prevents a lot of traveling. But we've seen some people down there before, but our biggest need is finding quality therapists. We don't just hire anyone. So we're always looking for people who have a special touch with seniors, who aren't in it for like the sexy side of things, the sports therapy. They want to do this and get people up and going, because exercise for some people is really just getting up and walking down the hallway. And that's a great, then they've exercised for the day. It's just movement with their body. So we're always looking for quality physical therapists and occupational therapists and even speech therapists. All of that kind of falls under our license with Medicare that we have. So yeah, if you need care for your seniors, that is our specialty. 95% of our patients are Medicare patients. We also have a lot of people along the coast who just prefer to be catered to. So we also go into homes. We help set up home gyms. We've seen judges in their chambers before. We'll go to the courthouse and set up tables in offices, downtown Long Beach and high-rise buildings. Wherever we can help people, we'll do it if we can help them. So that's really our goal, is to just help people feel better and live a better life.
All right. So now you've opened up another can of worms.
Uh-oh.
Which is, so I'm looking for caregivers, you're looking for therapists. We're on opposite sides of the country dealing with the same exact problem. A little bit of a difference between what you do and what I do is that I can increase my rates as high as I want, and I can pay people as much as I want because I have no hard ceiling. I certainly have a ceiling that people, if I raise my rates too high, then they just won't hire me. But your reimbursement is capped per Medicare and Medicaid and insurance. So what are you thinking in terms of how do you find the right employees and attract them to work with you when the difficulty is that the reimbursements are, for what most people generally say, lower, and they're not really, then they don't raise, the ceiling doesn't go up in the same way that the cost of living goes up in these places as well. So it can be very difficult to find people who are interested in doing that type of work. What are you seeing out there on the left coast?
Well, it's interesting. Where the way that we're set up, we don't have a lot of competition because we're sending a therapist into a person's home. So the way that the general therapy rules work, a therapist can be responsible for an assistant or an aide who can also see people. So one person in a facility can bill for more than one person at a time, where in our situation we can't. So we're very, very limited in what we can pay, but our people are so important to us, and the senior care is so important. We actually do give the majority of our reimbursement to the therapist, since they are doing most of the work, and we just kind of do things based on volume, given our business model, which also helps keep competition away from a business standpoint, because they can just make so much more money as a Part A company or in other areas, in an actual facility. So that is a challenge that we have. A lot of our therapists are referrals from current therapists, and they're all people who have had very specific instances with their family members or seniors or loved ones that they cared for that just changed their lives, and they just want to make a difference in other people's lives. So that is definitely a big challenge. Speaking of the younger generation, that I used to post jobs, back when I was still learning how to find the right people. And we would have people show up, just like one guy came in like a Van Halen t-shirt, khaki pants, and Vans. And I'm like, if this is how you show up to our interview, a senior is not going to let you into their home. So it's really challenging just to find that person, but it all comes through referrals, really. Our best therapists have been referrals from existing therapists.
Yeah, it's one thing that I've done is right before COVID hit, of course, I hired a HR rep, and her job is to just interview and do the HR of onboarding, recruiting, and then the paperwork associated with that. And it's one of those things where I looked at it as my product, my service is based around people, and I need to have a lot of people because I'm in an industry where it can be quiet for a week or two, like we're just doing maintenance on the current cases we have. And then it's weird, Tara. 5 people will call us within a 5 minute time span. It will just be insane. It will be like, how did 5 people just call us at exactly the same time with 5 new referrals
That
that
was
we
our
need to
yesterday.
fill? And you said, what happened? Where is this coming from? And it's so weird. And then you need to be able to mobilize people. Literally, we'll get calls, and I'm sure you do too, where people are like, I need services in like 3 hours.
Yeah.
And you're just like, okay, yeah, well, we're not gonna go, the 10-step process just turned into the 3-step process, and so you just mobilize people and you get people out there. But it's been one of those things where it's like, I need to have the people when those days come, because it's kind of crazy when they do.
Yeah. We call it feast or famine. That's what my husband and I, it's like feast or famine time. And when it's famine, we're like, work, work, work. And then all of a sudden it's like, too much, overload. And it always happens like right before vacation, holidays, when you don't want it to happen.
Of course, because everybody's trying to get home for the holidays, and they're willing to do anything at that point in time to be home for Christmas or home for Thanksgiving or whatever holidays they perform. Now, let me ask you another question that my aunt told me. So my aunt stayed with me. She lives half the time in Portugal. She comes to Massachusetts to check up on things, and then she moves down to Florida. So she stayed with me for 2 weeks, and I said, what do you think about living and working with, your spouse being your partner in your business? And it's something that my girlfriend and I have talked about as well. And she said, the rule I made with my husband is, from the time we get to work to the time that we leave work, for the most part, you can talk to me about anything work related you want to talk to me about. But once we get home and we take our shoes off, I don't want to hear it anymore, unless it is the building is on fire styled emergency that we have to deal with, because I need separation from my job. And I was interested in getting your opinion on that. Is that a rule and she goes, with COVID, it's a lot harder because you're working from home, but when you have an office, you have 2 separate areas you can go to. How has that worked out for you? You're shaking your head no.
Yeah, no, we've always worked from home, so it's always been an overlap. And he would probably like me to separate things more, but my brain just doesn't stop. And I'm always like, oh, there's an idea, here's an idea, what about this, what about that? And so I do not follow those rules. He might tune me out a lot of the time, but there's just so much that I just don't want to let it slip.
No, that's
So I
great.
am the opposite of that rule.
Well, I just was curious, because you're in the position. I just had this conversation like 3 months ago, 2 months ago. So that's great. Now, let's briefly talk about the NAIPC. It is a passion of yours. Um, you are in the leadership of the national part of the NAIPC. I'm in the leadership of my local Massachusetts chapter. So you by far are a bigger head honcho than I am. Yes, right. And so you talked about, you were part of the NAIPC or involved with it before when you were in Florida, and now you're even more involved with it. Tell people about the NAIPC, what they need to know about it, and why they should be interested in finding more about the NAIPC.
Well, the National Aging in Place Council is a nonprofit trade association, and it's made up of senior professionals and corporations who have a passion for helping seniors. They're all obviously selling a product or a service, but the intent of our organization is to educate people on the products and services that are out there. One of the programs I'm working on for January 26th, is Hidden Gems of Aging, products and services that are changing people's lives that no one's even really heard about. So I'm really excited to just share that information with people. And that's what this organization is about, is sharing and connecting and just making aging easier. That's what I want to hashtag everything, age easier, with the Aging in Place Council. In Orange County, I'm in Orange County, but we have 14 chapters across the country, and we also have quite a few members that are just floating around. So they're all about helping seniors and families, and We have a YouTube channel if you want to watch some of our past educational programs. And we're always looking for passionate people who love seniors to join us, even if it's just in a support. Like you're a marketing person who supports the seniors or supports the people supporting the seniors. We welcome everyone to our group. So it's ageinplace.org is our national website, and you can see all of our members' profiles on there.
And now, completely unbiased, who is the greatest member of the NAIPC in your opinion?
Well, we do have a new member of the week, Ryan. It's not you anymore.
Oh, it's not me anymore. So, all right, I was the member of the week for a while, and now
That
I'm
was
not the greatest
so
anymore.
3 weeks ago.
Oh, all right. Just like Instagram influencers, you're here today, gone tomorrow. I see how it is.
Yeah, but we're excited. I love the chapter that you're a part of. That Boston group is new and super energetic, and I love all of the members that you have there. They're all very passionate about seniors, and San Francisco is another new one. Chicago are some chapters that have some great new energy and great people coming on board.
Yeah, and I got involved with it because I wanted to help. The podcast was based on wanting to help. The podcast was I would go to Council on Aging's and like one person would show up to listen to me, which obviously crushed my ego. And so I couldn't take it anymore. And so I just figured I'd just talk into a microphone and see if anybody listened to it. And then people started listening to it. And you know where the most amount of people listen to? California. So,
really?
Yep. So there you go. It's actually a good thing that all the stats show that California by far and away is the #1 state that listens to the caregivers toolbox.
Is that your family up in LA? Is that who it is?
No, I would bet you that they don't even know I'm doing this.
Oh, no. Just
no.
checking.
No, he called me up yesterday. He's in real estate, so we talk real estate. But senior care is so far out of his purview. But the part of the NAIPC is to try to make it get into people's purviews, make people think about it, and that's where I think a lot of the individuals that are part of the NAIPC are doing it because. They realize that it's a huge market, and I don't mean it in the business way, but it's a huge market and a huge group of people that are going to or currently need a lot of help, and it's a huge portion of our population that isn't really focused on in much of a way. Even if there's something on the nightly news, like, something happened the other a couple of weeks ago. I was watching Lester Holt on the NBC nightly news, and how they have like near the end of the episodes, they'll have like not throwaway articles, but they'll have like a real quick 10-15 second thing that clearly they weren't going to dedicate a lot of time to. It was about like, it was maybe like a 30-second thing on senior isolation and how people who were active and social beforehand, seniors, now look like they've declined physically and mentally so much just in a couple months, to the point that you would have thought that these people have developed a cancer or disease that has made them look the way that they look, but it's just from being alone. And I tried to go online to NBC News and find that little clip, and they didn't upload it online. And it just made me, and maybe they've done it now, I don't know, but at the time it just made me be like, isn't that a perfect microcosm of like senior care? Like, it wasn't even worth uploading it to the NBC News. And I could see the other clips that were part of that broadcast. So clearly they were up there pretty quickly, but the senior isolation wasn't. And maybe it's up there now, I'll check, but I was kind of like a little disheartened, I guess. I was like, oh my God, we're fighting this uphill battle sometimes.
And you know what, the thing that's so surprising about that, as humans, we have very, very few things where we all have something in common, and we all have aging parents, and we're all going to age. So that's the one thing that maybe that's why people don't want to talk about it, because we all know it's going to happen. I don't know, but I just feel like it should be bringing us together, not.
I'd agree. I think it's the same feelings of not wanting to step on the scale after the holidays because you're afraid of what it's going to show. It's the, we've all probably experienced people that don't want to get tested for COVID because they're scared if they're going to be positive. Like, it's accepting that there's a danger to their life. So they're like, no, I'll be fine. It's not a big deal. And I think that's the same way with senior care is, we'll do that next year. Next year we'll do it. We can, because it's an awkward conversation and it's tough and family dynamics get involved and it's difficult, but that's why the NAIPC and individuals like yourself are so important, because, you're carrying the torch to try to change the thought process and the viewpoints of this and say, hey, listen, let's talk about this. And there's a ton of resources out there for you to look into, to make the decision for what's best for your family.
Yeah, true.
So with that being said, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. It was my first podcast ever. So
Really?
Check, done.
All right. So then, well, I mean, I think I wouldn't be surprised if we start doing podcasts together and then interviewing people. I don't know. Maybe that could happen.
That could be fun.
That would be fun. I think we should do that. But for the time being, I'm the solo host. My director of client care used to be a co-host with me, but once we went working remotely, I just took over the heavy responsibility of doing this myself. But no, thank you so much for coming on. And I'm glad we're going to be able to promote this on various different channels. So that will be good to start getting the content out there.
Awesome. Well,
Thanks, Tara.
All right.
And thank you so much for listening to the Caregivers Toolbox, Tools for Everyday Caregiving. We will catch you on the next one.